Hi, and welcome to the second short lecture from Chapter 3 in your textbook. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about the biological and social roots of the self. So when we talk about the biology and self-concept, the idea of your personal identity, who you think you are, there are certain biological factors that influence this, right? Influence how you think of who you are. So if you did make a list of the characteristics that describe you, right, you'll probably see a number of terms describing your personality. So according to your book, personality are the ways, sort of the characteristic ways that you think and behave across a variety of situations. I'll repeat that because this is another one that'll probably be on the exam. Personality equals the characteristic ways that you think and behave across a variety of situations. Now, studies suggest that some aspects of our personality are genetic. They're built into your DNA. They're hardwired then into you, right? So, to some degree, we're programmed to communicate in characteristic ways. So, some qualities, like whether or not you're an extrovert or an introvert, right? If you're outgoing or if you're shy, whether you're assertive or not, if you're verbally aggressive, for example, your overall willingness to communicate, all these things are hardwired into you. There's evidence that suggests that these are all genetic factors, that they're passed along from parents to children, generation after generation. At the same time, though, experience also plays a major factor, and traits can be changed, right? So if you're a shy person, with enough practice, effort, and learning, you can change your habits. So we can change traits and we can learn new ones, which is important to consider. You're not doomed to be shy, for example, for the rest of your life. Now, I look at this much like basketball. So I'd love to be a professional basketball player, but I'm short and stocky. I'm 5'9", and nothing's going to change that. So chances are I'm never going to become a professional basketball player. It's just genetic. I can't do it. I'm not tall enough. I don't have the type of body that I need to become a professional basketball player. But with enough practice and learning, I could become pretty good. And that's the same thing applies to these characteristics that we're talking about in terms of personality traits. So, with regard to socialization and self-concept, so socializing, your interaction with other people, and how you think about yourself, we've already talked about this a little bit in the last chapter. The messages that we get from other people really play a central role in shaping how we think about ourselves. We know, for example, with the wild boy from Aveyron, right, he didn't even have an idea of self because he had no interaction with other people. It's our interactions with other people that give us this idea of me or I or self, and it shapes how you think about and how you feel about yourself. This process of thinking about yourself is known as reflected appraisal. So reflected appraisal is the fact that each of us develops a self-concept that reflects the way we believe others see us. Now, it's important to realize that this might not be accurate. It doesn't reflect the way that other people see you. It reflects the way that we believe others see us. So how we think other people think of us. And that's important to remember. Now, as we already know, children are not born with any sense of identity. They have no sense of self. They learn to judge themselves only through the way that other people treat them. So, as a result, you can think about how important it is for a child to receive positive messages. It's when you're a small child that you're forming your self-concept. These are some of the most important years in terms of figuring out who you are and how you feel about yourself. And of course, the way you figure this out is based on how you think other people view you. So if you're surrounded by people telling you, oh, you're so smart, you can do anything you put your mind to, right? These are positive messages that have a tremendous impact on how people think about themselves. At the same time, if you are constantly telling a child, oh, you're a bad boy, can't you do anything right? These kinds of messages help children to develop negative self-concept. And that kind of negative impact can stay with you for years and years. We know that these kinds of messages are really impactful when they come from significant others. Now, significant others, your book defines them as people whose opinions we especially value. These could be your parents, your grandparents, brothers and sisters, your best friends, your coach, people whose opinions you really value. So when we get positive messages from those people, it can go a long way to helping create a positive self-concept that is lasting and carries on over a long period of time. Now, what we find is that the impact of significant others and their opinions, how we think they think of us, remains really strong throughout adolescence. So from the time you're little up through being a teenager. And it's when you get into your teens, particularly your later teens, that peer groups also become very important. Your friends. Many of you probably experienced this recently as you were growing up, moving through high school. Your friends became more and more important. And in fact, in some instances, you might have felt even closer to your friends than you did your own parents. Now, this impact becomes less pronounced as we grow older. Indeed, once you hit the age of 30, your self-concept really doesn't change that much. You've kind of figured out who you are, and this image of who you are in your own mind stays with you and doesn't change much at all until you die. So really, it's these first 3 decades of your life where significant others are really important. Who is a significant other changes over time. And then finally, after those first 3 decades, what these people think doesn't matter as much as it did when you were younger. Another way that we make sense of ourselves is through something called social comparison. Social comparison is evaluating ourselves in terms of how we compare to other people. Now, there's 2 kinds of social comparison. So you might look at another person and say, am I superior or inferior to them in a variety of respects? Do I earn more money than my neighbor? Am I skinnier than the girl who sits next to me in class? Am I smarter than the boy in front of me? Am I a better football player than John? And then another way we think about social comparison is in terms of similarity and difference. So are they different from me? Or are they the same as me? And over time, we form what are called reference groups. These are the groups that we use for comparison. And they play an important key role in shaping our view of ourselves. So your reference group, for example, in the context of school, might be your fellow classmates, particularly when it comes to grades. Did I do better or worse than the person sitting next to me? Where do I fall in the class average? Did I do better than most people? So you see, we oftentimes look to the people around us in order to evaluate ourselves. Now, of course, in the age of the media age and the social media age, one of the things that's happened is that many people complain that we're holding ourselves up to kind of an impossible standard, and that's why I've got this picture of this young lady right here, right? So her body type, for example, is highly unusual. It's very unusual for someone to be that tall and that slim, right? Have that kind of build and genetics. But nevertheless, when you're bombarded by images like this, you compare yourself against many of these images that you see on the internet or in magazines. And there are a lot of people in social science who worry about this because it creates kind of unrealistic bars that we measure ourselves against. Excuse me. So with regard to social comparison, some factors are really, really apparent, really clear. So you could say, for example, I'm taller than Bob. I mean, that's easy to figure out. However, the significance that you attribute to these factors, how you feel about being taller than Bob, is really determined in large part through your interaction with others. So you can tell whether or not you're taller than Bob, but whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing is really determined by what other people say and how they think about your height, or at least how you think they think about your height. All right, that's it for this short lecture. Thanks for tuning in.